If you're a new executive, I'm sure you're feeling the pressure to make your mark. This video will help you make your mark in a way that doesn't actually unintentionally create additional chaos in the organization and makes the improvements you want to make. I've watched CEOs come into an organization and do exactly what everybody expects them to do. They come in strong, announce a new vision, and start making changes fast. And within weeks, everything gets worse, not better. Not because the CEO is wrong necessarily. It's just the approach. They prescribed change before they diagnosed the system. I was talking to a past client just the other day. He's thriving with his organization now that we've got him sold on this idea of diagnosing before you prescribe. What he said about before was that he thought he was being decisive, a good leader. What was actually happening was he was wasting the momentum and the goodwill and the trust he had with the organization on things that weren't making the biggest impact for the organization. He was creating change fatigue and frustration in his team without getting any of the meaningful impacts that might have made it worth it. So today I'm going to give you a 30-day diagnostic protocol. It's how you earn the right to change what matters without burning your momentum and political capital. Your first 30, 60, 90, 100, whatever days aren't about proving you're smart. You've already got the job. They're about building trust and getting accurate information fast. Because when you misdiagnose an organization, you don't just waste time. You create friction. And friction turns into chaos bleed. Lost margin, high turnover, slower execution, a leadership team that starts hedging their bets instead of committing to the organization. One of my core beliefs is don't do 10 things. Sometimes easier said than done. Do one thing that knocks down 10. In your first 30 days, that one thing is diagnosis. Everyone expects the new leader to come in and start rearranging the furniture, but do the unexpected. When you come in and run a diagnostic instead, you're not delaying momentum, you're directing it. Because the diagnostic does 3 things at once or more. It gives you context. It shows your people you're not just here to perform for them or for the board. And it lowers the ambient anxiety in the system. When people don't know what kind of leader you are yet, they brace for impact. When you start with listening and with data, they stop bracing and start contributing. And once you have that trust, you can move faster with less resistance, and the possibilities are endless. All right, let's get to work. Okay, here is the protocol. 3 scans, 3 outputs, 3 ego traps. The scans give you the data. The outputs keep you focused. And the ego traps over here are what derail good leaders, so you want to stay away from them. Let's get into it. The first scan is a scan about clarity. This is all making sure everybody in the organization is on the same page. Does everybody understand what the organization's top 3 priorities are right now? Does everybody understand what you've decided are not going to be priorities in the organization right now? Are the decision rights clear, or are decisions made by volume and politics? You want to make sure you first scan your organization for clarity. The second scan you want to do as a new CEO is all about consistency. This is understanding how your organization creates success. Does the organization's success rely on amazing individual heroes in the organization, or is success baked into the systems and processes in the organization? Where does work routinely stall? And how often do priorities shift midstream, creating rework and cynicism? That's what you want to know around the organization's consistency. And the third scan you want to look at is friction. I call these your vital signs and also looking at outliers. This is where you stop guessing. Looking at the last 12 months of data, looking at leadership churn, voluntary attrition, and your core KPIs by department and division. Then hunt the outliers. If a group is beating the average, learn what's different in their ecosystem. Same, if a group is struggling, don't default to blame. Figure out what's creating the chaos there and do field work, one-on-ones with department heads. They're not a courtesy tour. They're how you validate what the data is telling you. So these 3 scans give you your inputs And now here's what you can produce in the outputs. The first is what I call a defensible diagnosis. So some simple 2x2 that gives you an indication of where you are. This isn't a deep dive. This is just a placement. You take what you learn from the scans and you place the dot where you are really. If you have clarity and consistency, are you low clarity, low consistency, high effort, low progress, clear strategy, but inconsistent delivery, or operating in the flow state right now with high in both? By placing yourself on a 2x2 using the inputs, you can explain why you place the dot where you are. If you want a deeper walkthrough of the 2x2 grid, I have a whole video describing that in detail. And if you'd rather just take a shortcut, I've created a free diagnostic that helps you place the dot by asking you 14 questions and estimating your chaos bleed rate by asking you to input a few data points. That way, you don't have to guess, and you've got a downloadable PDF you can use to create this diagnosis. The shortcut will also give you the second output, which is your bleed hypothesis. And then you can add to it. So output 2 is this bleed hypothesis. And this is all about where friction is costing you the most and where is it concentrated. You want to name the top 1 or 2 friction points and the part of the organization where it's the loudest. Then name the cost signal you're seeing: margin pressure, turnover, missed delivery, customer churn, leadership exhaustion, whatever it is. These outliers that you found in your scan, they're the ones that will reveal this bleed for you. Averages hide the bleed, but if you look at the outliers, both success and negative outliers, they'll reveal some of this bleed. And the final output is your 90-day triage focus. I'm not a plan-to-plan person, but I am also not a action above all else person. You need to diagnose first before you prescribe a solution, especially if you're coming in as a new CEO. But you also need to take action. That's your job. But you need to know enough about the organization so you can identify your big domino. What is the one thing that if you solve it first will knock down several other problems or friction points that you uncovered? What does knocking that domino down unlock? And what's going to be paused to create the capacity to implement your triage plan? If everything stays a priority, nothing changes. A big part of triage is this around deciding what you will pause or deprioritize so that you can reshuffle resources to your big domino for maximum impact. Now on to the ego traps. First, it's not about you. Oh, let me move this over. It's not about you. You've already got the job. If your first month is about making your mark, you'll squander your credibility creating disruption instead of stability. The second pitfall is making change for change's sake. Don't burn your political capital or your organizational momentum on low impact fixes. If you diagnose first, you'll make sure that your first changes actually matter. And here's a hint. Only in very rare cases is a reorganization actually the right big domino for an executive's first 90 days. Most of the time, it's reorganizing chairs on the Titanic. And finally, the last ego trip or ego trap, assuming that you know best. Fresh eyes are really powerful when they're used to ask better questions. But fresh eyes can be dangerous when they simply import their last company's answers into their new company's reality. So do the scans, produce the outputs, avoid the ego traps, and you'll earn the only thing that makes leadership real: people willing to follow your lead. That's how you make your mark without leaving chaos behind. Here's your imperfect action for this week, especially if you're new in the seat. Pick one outlier. If it's a positive outlier, schedule a conversation and ask, what's different here that makes execution easier? If it's a negative outlier, schedule a conversation and ask, Where's the friction showing up most predictably? And what do you think is driving it? You don't have to fix anything this week. Your goal is to sharpen your diagnosis so your first big move is high impact. In the next video, I walk you through the root cause patterns underneath friction so you stop treating symptoms and start treating the condition. Drop a comment with the biggest outlier or friction point you're seeing right now. I read the comments and I'll try to help, and we'll make follow-up videos on specific themes or patterns that emerge so we can dive deeper into your urgent issues. Bottom line, 3 scans, 3 outputs, 3 ego traps to avoid. Don't prescribe before you diagnose. That's how you build momentum. That's how you make your mark without creating chaos. See you in the next one.